Good evening and welcome to the Gin and Tonic show on this Friday, the 24th of May, 2019. Welcome back to the show. We took a break last week. There were some personal issues and my co-host Stops was a little bit under the weather, so I'm glad to have Stops and Thunderous back with me. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys.
Yes.
I'm so sick. I've got a cold.
No, you're not that bad. Stops, do you want to just do your intro bit if you have it available?
I don't, but it's not a big deal. It's just that what I like to do in the, before we do the show is just explain. I'm sorry, I've still got this stupid cold. Explain who we are, what we're doing, what we're not doing, because I think it's important that people understand what we're actually doing. Because there's still people who say, well, if you're criticizing Islam, why don't you criticize Christianity? Well, there's a lot of people who are criticizing Christianity. And there's very few people actually who are able to criticize Islam due to the complexity of the topic. And this is why we are the only call-in show. I mean, there are a lot of programs who are providing facts and information on Islam. But as far as I know, we are the only English-speaking call-in show which is run by non-Muslims where people can come and call in and discuss Islam. And this is why we critique, we provide facts, we refer to reality, and what we do is just provide the information on Islam. So we focus on Islam, and doing so, we need to always categorically say that we condemn any abuse, oppression, slavery, any kind of violence. And I'm the person who can say, yes, I will condemn any man who performs any kind of sexual act on a 9-year-old girl, regardless of who, what, where, when, how. Now, 99% of Muslims cannot do that. I can, we can. And this is why we do this, because I think we embrace free speech and constructive criticism, factual and constructive criticism. And that's what we try and do. So I think we're decent human beings, much more decent than what the Bible or the Quran or anybody tells us to be regarding slavery, regarding misogyny, regarding things like that. And that is what we do. What we don't do is we don't attack. We don't attack Muslims. We differentiate between the ideology, Islam, and the people, the Muslims. So I'm not going to, just attack a Muslim just because he's a Muslim. I attack stupidity. I attack stupid people. Absolutely. I critique them. I comment on their stupidity, but I don't attack them. Now, if you want to comment, if you want to question, correct, or you're simply curious about anything Islam, this is the right place to do it. And another thing is, don't go to Patreon. Don't go to PayPal. Don't go and support us financially. We're doing this from the bottom of our heart, which is because we're nice people. So we don't do this to get paid. All right. So we don't need financial support to do this. This is a free service that we are providing. Gin and Tonic show has always been free, and we don't believe in getting paid for this. And then, of course, the thing is, we're still dragging our feet with the Hangout. And I think until Google puts our feet to the fire and says, okay, we've got 1 week and we're going to shut down Hangouts, we're not going to do anything because it's working. But we are going to have to move to a different platform, and we'll inform you as soon as that is done. Okay, that's it from my side.
Good stuff. So somebody asked what happened last week. Stops was ill. I had a family matter to take care of, and Thunderous was then able to take a Friday evening off. So we're back as usual today. Stops is, as you can see, almost recovered. So Thunderous prayed. We all send good wishes, and I think all of that. Although Thunderous did say he prayed towards Mecca, so I'm not sure that might have diluted the prayer a little bit. But we all send good wishes and prayers, and Stops is back with us. So we're all grateful for that. So that's what happened last week. As Stops mentioned in the comments there, if you want to join us as a Muslim on the show tonight, my Facebook is not operational at the moment for a particular reason. So he's put a link in there. If you click on that link and you go there and make a comment, Stops will be monitoring that, and he can help you to join the show, because putting the link in here will get us a whole bunch of trolls. So we're not going to be doing that. Welcome to Jarl and to everybody else who's watching. And if you have any comments, if you want to say anything, as I say, then please post something in the main live chat there. And if you want to join us, then let us know and follow the link there. As that disappears up on the top of the screen, I'm sure Stops will be able to post it again.
Yeah. The thing is, it's lovely that you guys are interacting, and I love interacting with the chat, and I love this, that it's not just one way, that not we are the ones who are lecturing somebody. No, we're trying to keep it interactive. But if you do say you guys are bigots, okay, brilliant. I love criticism because that's how I learn. But so if you could, it would be really wonderful if you say you are bigots because. Then we have a basis. Then we can either discuss this or ignore this or whatever. But at the moment, you guys are bigots. Doesn't matter. Is this satire? Are you is this a joke? Is it serious? We don't know. So if
I know who that is, so that's fine. It's Jarl. He's one of our mates. So
okay, exactly.
He's one of the best trolls on internet at times.
That's what
He's
I'm
got
saying.
more accounts than I made hot breakfast.
Yeah.
So he's quite an expert at doing all of that. So it's all good. But he's a great guy. He's actually quite a knowledgeable atheist when he fancies it. Other times he fancies trolling, but it's all good.
So I used the right vocabulary there. Brilliant. Okay.
Cool. With that said, let's do a few crazy comments. We haven't done that for a little while, and we've got a few interesting ones here. So let me bring that up.
Can I do a positive crazy comment?
Oh yeah, sure, go for it. Or
Dan Robitsky, and I've copied this in here. This is amazing. Okay, this is how fast science can actually work, because I didn't think that I was going to see this in my lifetime. For the first time, and I'm quoting, scientists have created life with genetic code that was developed from scratch. A University of Cambridge team created living, reproducing E. coli bacteria with DNA coded entirely by humans, according to the New York Times. The new bacteria, it looks a little bit wonky, but they behave more or less the same as natural E. coli. Learning to rebuild genomes from scratch could teach scientists how DNA originally came to be and how we can manipulate it to create new life. Now, this is a huge step. This is a huge step from the old Miller-Urey experiments that we had a couple of years ago. So this is really brilliant.
Good. Well, I'll actually do one here. I didn't capture this, but since you're doing it, and we'll do a positive one here. A few of the comments we'll see tonight were from this particular video. So let me pop this video into the chat for those who want to watch. That's with Skydive Full and two of the Muslim EF Dawa guys. And one of the comments there says, I personally have always enjoyed the discussion of the Full. He's a genuine knowledge seeker and extremely pleasant during his discourse. May Allah guide him. Apart from the other guide him, everything else is good. So, and there was another one here actually. So not every single comment is negative, right? But there are a few that are, and I'll be reading some of that. Phil is a very respectful, smart guy who isn't debating for nothing. I really like his way of arguing about stuff. When will you make another debate with him? So there are a few comments. Let it not be said that every single comment is a bad one. I like Phil. I actually learned a lot of science from videos with him. Please continue with him more. So there are a few videos, there are a few comments there that are positive. But unfortunately, the majority are not positive. But before we do that, let's share this one. So this is something Stops got. So tell me when to move down, Stops, and I'll let you tell us about this.
Okay, I got to in this video that you see at the bottom, you have this guy saying, if you buy a book by this Linda woman, I will send you my book for free. Because I proposed to him, listen, send me your book as a PDF and I'll critique it. I'll be fair about it. I'll critique it. But it seems he's too scared of that. So then he made an offer where he says, buy a book by Linda and I will give you my book for free. So I said, okay, cool. That's a good deal. So I did this and I said, well, what am I supposed to do? He says, well, just follow instructions. I said, well, there are no instructions. You have to give me instructions on what to do. So he doesn't understand these things, okay? He can't follow process. He can't follow, rational thinking. So in the end, he said, okay, do this and this and this. So I did this. And he says, okay, then now I will send you my book. Send me the address. So I did this. Nothing happens. So I said to him, okay, well, when are you going to send me the book? And he says, when you apologize. I said, apologize for what? No, I have no idea why I should apologize for something. He says, well, you have to apologize to me. So he wants me to crawl on my knees, come and apologize for I don't know what. He doesn't like if I tell somebody the truth. He can't handle facts. He can't handle reality. So I should apologize for reality and for the stupidity that he is spreading on the net. So I don't quite understand this. So I said to him, listen, you're a piece of shit. You promised, you told me that I should go and do this and this. I did this. And now you are not coming forth with your end of the deal. Now you can go a little bit down. So he says, okay, I have every intention to send it, but now you just prolonged it another month. What does that mean? Well, if you read this and you think about this in a while, he says that if I don't apologize and I write something different, he is going to send it a month later. Okay. So now I told him I stand for authenticity, for honesty, morality, ethics, integrity. You're a dirtbag, a primitive, self-righteous, deceptive liar. And it's here for everyone to see. Go screw yourself, because I'm not going to apologize for something. And others are chiming in. Looks like you're clearly afraid and blah, blah, blah. And now at the bottom here, it says, Bernard Long, now you have extended the timeline for receiving the book to February 2019, or you can apologize open or privately so I can get it shipped out to you today. Your call.
How long ago was this? Because that's way past.
Now, go to the next one.
Yeah. Okay. Let's make it a bit bigger.
So he says, and I said to him, you said, I will send you my book. And I said, no, you're a liar. And you will never change and you will never do what you promised you will do. Says, now you have just extended the time for another month. Now I will send you my book in January of 2019. The other option is you simply apologize for your foul-mouthed behavior so I can send the book to you today. Now, I can't think of any more insults. I can't think of anything that I can.
Keen-eyed viewers will see that he's going back in months. Yeah. So you keep going, and he'll be back at 2018.
No, but eventually he's going to realize if he adds a month and a month and a month, he's going to get to May 2019, and maybe he will then realize that this is this year.
But at the moment, he's going backwards now. I don't know how that works.
I tell you, this guy is so dumb. He doesn't realize that it should be January 2020 and February 2020 and March 2020. Instead, he's going backwards and he's still going in 2019. So if he hurries up, he could still make January 2019 or something.
Yeah, you'd have to say to him, okay, if I don't insult you in a comment, does the month start going the other way now? Every time I'm polite, you add a month so that you actually get to this year at the correct month. What is that? How many insults is that? That's sorry, how many non-insults is that? 4. So you've got to be polite 4 times to get to May. So
now, the funny thing is that in Amazon, you get a free preview of a couple of pages of his book. Okay. Now, I just went to, I think it's on the 2nd or 3rd page or something like this, and it's the contents. And in the contents of the book, can you believe it? This is like right in the beginning, the contents. He already has a spelling error. Like it doesn't say patriot or something, but patroit or something like this. It's absolutely amazing how you could publish a book. I mean, I sent Rob an excerpt of my book, which I wrote like 10 years ago, and I never published, and I stopped. So I never finished the spell checking on this. So he said, really, you spelled this word wrong? And he was shocked that I spelled a word wrong. But this is somebody who's actually published the book, who's advertising his book, who's doing a lot of drum rolling that he's going to kill all atheists off with intellectual arguments and things like that. And then on the contents, he has a spelling mistake. Anyway, so I'll see that I can get my hands on this thing and then just do a critique. Anyway, so I thought this was quite funny to show how the brain works of this guy, that he's so full of hate, he's so full of hatred, and so, he doesn't think straight anymore. He hates us so much because he can't have an argument, and we kill every argument from a intellectual point of view, not through violence and not through anything like that. And this is the effect that it has on him. So
I think this will be going for years, you and him. I've just sort of given up with him. I don't respond anymore. But you and he are like the sort of interlocutors that'll carry on for years. So
No, I'm not interested in you. God, I'll do the book and then I'm finished. I mean, come on, why should I worry
yeah, we
about a
can
guy
do it
like
on the
that?
show, I suppose, as well. So that'll be cool. Right, let's get on to the next one here. So this was again with Phil and the F. Dawa guys. Stupid Phil tries to imply humanity characteristics to God to escape. So obviously this fella thinks Phil is stupid. I don't know. I did watch the video. I don't know what he can be referring to there. So there we go.
Well, one thing you need, sorry, one thing you need to understand: the word "escape" is, sorry, is used by a lot of Muslims to save himself. It's not escape. The word usage is very different.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I don't remember where that comes in, but to say Phil's stupid, yeah, obviously they don't know him, etc. So anyway, speed of light does not make it 0 time. So Phil was talking about massless particles and how the passage of time does not affect massless particles. It's a bit of a complicated topic, but this fellow misinterpret this to think that the speed of light does not make it 0 time. So again, Phil talks about somewhat complex topics, and many of the viewers really don't know what he's talking about. And he's not going even very deep. If you listen to the actual cosmologists during some of his interviews, I mean, they go into a deep level that would, make you sort of spin, your head spin and your brain stop. It's just pretty complex stuff. But he tries to keep it simple. But even keeping it simple, this poor fellow misunderstands it. I think Phil is struggling as he just doesn't understand the basic logical life. It's just never ending for him. Abbas, I feel his best work today, how he explained, and Imran is brilliant as always. Very intelligent conversation with all three. I'm not too sure what Phil was struggling with, but I've posted the link into the live chat, so anybody who wants to watch that and go and watch that and try and explain to us where Phil was struggling, because I must have missed that.
Which Imran is this?
E.F. Dawa Imran, so the doctor. So you've got Abbas, who normally phones into LBC radio, and then you've got Imran, who's sort of the smaller guy, and then you've got Darren Hamza. It's normally the three of them that are E.F. Dawa, right?
Is Imran the guy that I had this running in together?
Yes,
Who
the guy
did
you don't like.
slavery? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was him and Abbas chatting to Phil in this particular case.
By the way, can I just address something in the chat quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
Because there was this Bangladeshi, this Mufasil Islam. Does anybody really have the facts? Or because for me, this looks like a publicity stunt, okay? So I don't know if we should address this before we really get the facts, unless you really do have the facts, okay? Because I'm a little bit, well, maybe I'm too skeptical, but I don't believe this whole Mufasil Islam thing.
Sorry, I missed you there. I just had a quick interruption. So I missed you. You back there, Stops?
Yeah, this button is very slow today. I should check Facebook, and I'm doing this, and I'm not getting anything.
All right, let me move on to the next one, because Thunder's been awfully quiet there. Let's just finish this so we can get onto the verses, shall we? If only Sabur was there. Obviously, this guy hasn't watched the discussion with Phil and Sabur. I don't think Sabur wants to be there, and certainly doesn't want to have a what do you call it? A formal debate with Phil. So there we go. I think that's the last one. Oh no, one more here. As Darren Hamza said before, the atheists in the park who keep asking the same question to the Muslims over and over again after getting the answers, they are merely trolls. Now, isn't that fascinating? How the Muslims in Speaker's Corner go to the Christians every single Sunday and says, hey, your God is 3, but it's 1. What is this 3 and 1? Every single Sunday without fail, right? But that, of course, is missed by this particular fella. So when somebody challenges the Muslims and asks them similar questions regularly, somehow that's a problem and they're trolls. Go figure. I think that basically says it all. The double standard is not missed there.
Okay, I'm inviting your favorite troll.
Who's my favorite troll? Let's pop. There we go. That's the video, by the way, that I was referring to for the crazy comments. If you want to go watch it, again, I always find a full interesting to listen to. So let's get on to we ended last week week before last, should I say. I had a quick look at the video. We ended week before last on 242. So here we are again, just as a reminder. Surah 2, 242. Thus does Allah make clear to you his verses that you might use reason. Thus does Allah make clear his signs to you in order that ye may understand. So as Thunderous often says, a book made clear, well, there it is in black and white with a bit of beige in between. How many different translations would you like? Thus makes clear Allah for you his verses so that you may use your intellect, is the corpus version. So when any of us say clear, then Surah 242 is where we are getting that from. And that was the last one we ended on last week. I think we'll all agree that it's anything but clear. So moving on to 243. Sahih International. Have you not considered those who left their homes in many thousands, fearing death? Allah said to them, die, and then he restored them to life. And Allah is full of bounty to the people, but most of the people do not show gratitude. Didn't we do this as well, or is this a repeat?
Could be a repeat. I don't know. I've closed the...
Okay, because I looked at last week's one, and the last one that we saw on screen was at 242.
This is the one that we got bogged down with the guest that came on the show with reference to that we looked at the commentaries about how one commentary said 8,000 and another one said between 4 and 70,000, and we were looking at
yes. Oh, so definitely this one.
Yeah.
Then, okay, so we've done this then.
The last we had was 245. Who would let go alone?
Oh, okay, so my apologies then, because when I looked at 2 weeks ago's show, it was 242 that came up on the screen there. So somehow, apologies for that. So 245 was the last one we did last week. Who is it that would loan Allah a goodly loan so that he may multiply it for him many times over? And it is Allah who withholds and grants abundance, and to him he will be returned. Okay, so that was 2 weeks ago's show. So on to 246, a bit of a longer one here. Sahih International. Have you not considered the assembly of the children of Israel after the time of Moses, when they said to the prophet of theirs, send us a king and we will fight in the way of Allah? He said, would you perhaps refrain from fighting if fighting was prescribed for you? They said, and why should we not fight in the cause of Allah when we have been driven out of our homes and from our children? But when fighting was prescribed for them, they turned away, except for a few of them, and Allah is knowing of the wrongdoers. Yusuf Ali, hast thou not turned thy vision to the chiefs of the children of Israel after the time of Moses? They said to a prophet that was among them, anoint for us a king that we may fight in the cause of Allah. He said, it is not possible. If you were commanded to fight, that ye will not fight. That might be a spelling mistake there. They said, we could... Oh, my Siri's coming up there. Whoa. How did that happen? I have just triggered Siri. There we go. He said, it is not possible. If you're commanded to fight, will you not fight? They said, how could we refuse to fight in the cause of Allah, seeing that we were turned out of our homes and families? But when they were commanded to fight, they turned back, except for a small band among them. But Allah has full knowledge of those who do wrong. So this was after the time of Moses. Thunderous, you might know a little bit more about this as well.
No, I wouldn't, because I don't know where Muhammad's getting this from, because he's certainly not getting it from the Bible. I can only assume he's getting it from the Talmud. This is certainly not a biblical account.
They said unto the prophet is Samuel. Shamuel. So that's what this stuff here is suggesting.
Where's he getting that from?
Yeah, your guess is
later. 4 centuries later, where's he getting this from? And if it's a book made clear, a book made easy to understand, why do we need a commentary 4 centuries later when Allah could have revealed it in his perfect books before, when Muhammad was revealing it?
Well, because that would have made the book too big, Thunderous. Haven't you heard that? The book would be too voluminous.
Well, if Allah cut out all the times he keeps reminding people of the stuff and keeps repeating himself, then the book would be so thick.
Yes. I mean, they also talk about, save a few of them, 313 men, right?
Where
I'm
to
not
get
sure
that from?
where they get that number from.
And it's
Yeah, Samuel. Here they talk about Samuel again. Now, why, like you say, why is that name not in there, and why doesn't it explain where that came from?
see, this is nothing to do with any kind of apologetics from my standpoint, because of the stand that I make on certain religious beliefs that I hold to. But in principle, one has to ask, if you're going to come to conclusions like names and ethnic origins and numbers, you have to have a foundation as to how you come to your conclusions. So for a man 4 centuries later, after the effect of this verse being revealed, can he explain what his source is? Where is the historical source? Where is the origin of the information? It just seems that the commentators centuries later are trying to have to justify these verses, what they mean, and they're extrapolating this information out of thin air. And of course, for the Muslims say, well, it was in the Bible, but the Bible's been corrupted. That's why you can't find it in the Bible.
Can't win.
But they have got the name Samuel from somewhere as well, right?
But they've got to name the prophet. There's 123,999 prophets that have gone into the world as far as Islam is concerned. They have to have a name for this guy. They can't, out of 123,999, they can't name this guy. They've got to give him a name, and they've got to try they've got to try and bind it with the nation of Israel, because they're trying to appeal to the God of the Jews that Muhammad is coming in the same lineage. And the interesting thing is,
so obviously
why are they? He's not explaining why they're asking for a king. Why did they need a king to fight for them? Weren't they capable of fighting? I mean, since the time of Adam, when you go through the Quran, all they were talking about, one prophet after another, Noah or Abraham or whoever, seemed to have arguments or disputes with rivaling nations and tribes. Yet there was never a need for a king to fight. Why all of a sudden in Moses' day is there a need for a king to fight in the cause of Allah? What purpose does royalty serve? I mean, that's the whole point of a king. He stands as a royal figurehead to the nation. Why do they need a royal figurehead? This is not explained in the Quran, why this is the case. If Allah is the king, Allah is
just questions everywhere.
Why do they need a man to represent them as a member of royalty?
Apart from anything else, they could have just made this clear, right? Rather than, as you say,
but how does this provide guidance for a Muslim if this is talking about something completely different?
What do you mean, talking about something completely different?
Okay. What if I'm a person and I'm reading about the chiefs in Israel at the time of Moses? How does this give me any kind of guidance towards my own spiritual enlightenment?
I suppose they could argue that they were it's just relaying a story, right, about this, so that this is like a warning, a message for other people.
I'm going to ask you to fight for me, so get ready to fight for me, because look at the past, people did not and they lost. So now go ahead and do this. Instead of giving me a whole long conflated story, which doesn't, a convoluted story, sorry, which doesn't help me in any way, because now you need to go and exactly what Thunderous is saying. Now you need to read up on the history of the Jews, find out that this is from the Talmud or something, or the Torah or whatever, which is supposed to be corrupted, where you don't know how you're going to trust which part in doing what. And you still don't get the message that you're supposed to be getting out of it. You need to read the tafsir a couple of hundred years later to understand what this is trying to tell them. So,
and if the Quran was in heaven before it came to earth, before the creation of the universe, then why is Allah revealing a narrative, or rather repeating a narrative? What is Allah doing? Let's assume, for argument's sake, for the sake of this discussion, that this encounter, this incident, this narrative is actually in the Bible. It's not, but let's presume that it is. Why is Allah repeating it?
Yeah.
What is the purpose? Yeah, why not just refer to that source? But he's not.
Exactly.
He's not even appealing to the Jews. Look, the Jews have this information, or whoever nation has this information. It's recorded in your history, or it's recorded in history, because it's not recorded in history. Hence why there's no point of reference.
And come on, the whole thing. Why should we not fight in the cause of Allah? Why would a human being who is like nothing fight for a God? How the fuck is that supposed to work? Why can't a God? I mean, why would you have to fight? Why is it always this violence? Why is it always this thing that you need to oppress others in order to get your point across? Can't there be something nice about this that people will say, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do that. Instead of going to say, well, you need to fight for this, you need to do this. And if you kill somebody, don't worry, it was actually your God. But no, you need to do the fighting. And I can't, even though I am the God who is fighting for you and killing them, but you need to do this. This is absolute nonsense.
But it's not even explained what the cause is. Normally, when you're talking about a cause, there's some kind of protocol, principle, reason, or rationale. Hence why you use the word cause. It's given it's endowing, if you like, the nature of the substance of what you're trying to challenge or fight or stand for, like a just cause. So, for example, there is normally a rationale or a reason or a particular or an ideology behind it. There is no ideology explained as to what the cause is. It is just merely fight, and the only thing you can discern from this fight is, unless for the cause of fighting and killing people, unless they worship Allah.
What is interesting is I watched a video late last night, I think it was, on Apostate Prophet with David Wood, where they were talking and they had this brilliant idea. And they said, wow, I've just got this brilliant idea. Why don't we go and read the Quran, sentence for sentence, letter for letter, and discuss this? I thought, yeah, you idiots, why don't you come here and help us? Instead of opening up another one on the same topic, why don't you come here and we do this together?
Drop them a message. And
David Wood's a smart guy, no doubt about that. But the one
by the
thing
way, you've got Hud waiting for you, okay, Rob? You've got. I can't read his name on the panel. Waiting. Patiently.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Thunderous. Carry on.
I'll say I've got great respect for David Wood, and he is a smart guy. But the one thing about David Wood, with respect to him, he's a bit of a plagiarist. He will. This show, no doubt, in the panel on here, and Stop certainly has, if you like, years of experience on the internet. It's not as if this guy Stops is unknown. I've commented frequently on David Wood's videos and posts over the years, only to find that he's repeated what I've said, or using an idiom or an example of what I've said, or what others I've read in other people's comments. David Wood has taken almost as his own idea or conclusion. So for him to turn around and say, let's go through the Quran verse by verse and then discuss it, that sounds like he's in regular communication with the Apostate Prophet. The Apostate Prophet has been on this show. They know what this show does. So obviously the Apostate Prophet has gone back to David Wood and said, oh, I know some guys that are doing this. And then David Wood is sort of like, well, we won't refer to those guys that are doing this. I'm going to make it out that this is my idea. And then by doing that, what he's doing is he's almost like taking the audience for himself and almost, if you like, giving us or this show or this panel any credibility or any reference.
Okay, but that's speculation. We don't know that.
No, but
yeah, I mean, we can reach out to them, I guess, and say, hey, we're doing this already. Do you guys want to join us? Right? That's one way to do it. Anyway, we can always chat about that separately, I think. Hey, y'all, welcome.
This just came up while we were talking about it.
How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Rob. Hey, Spam. Hey,
Hi.
Thunderous.
Hi.
Hello, Troll.
I'm here to crash this bigot party.
All right. Are you going to play devil's advocate for the Muslim, or are you going to try and make sense of anything we're reading here?
No, I'll try to make sense.
Can you make sense of anything we're reading?
But you got to admit that spamming provoked me, man.
If that's all I do, that's fine.
Nah, brilliant. All right, let's move on to 247. See if we can make sense of the next one. And their prophet said to them, indeed, Allah has sent you Saul as a king. They said, how can he have kingship over us while we are more worthy of kingship than him, and he has not been given any measure of wealth? He said, indeed, Allah has chosen him over you and has increased him abundantly in knowledge and stature, and Allah gives him sovereignty to whom he wills. And Allah is all-encompassing in favor and knowing. Yusuf Ali, their prophet, said to them, Allah hath appointed Talut as a king over you. They said, how can he exercise authority over us when we are better fitted than he to exercise authority? And he is not even gifted with wealth in abundance. He said, Allah hath chosen him above you and hath gifted him abundantly with knowledge and bodily prowess. Allah granteth his authority to whom he pleaseth. Allah careth for all, and he knoweth all things. So now here's Saul. So I'm not sure where Samuel came in. What does it say about the tafsirs here? Okay, that's because here they talked about Samuel. Is Samuel and Saul the same, Thunderous? Same person, is it?
No. Samuel was the prophet. Saul was the man that was anointed by Samuel to be king.
Ah, okay, right, okay. So, right, that's a bit. What can we say about that? Right, that's Jalalain. Let me just go back to the actual verses there. Okay, so they're complaining that Saul was anointed king. They being the children of Israel, presumably. This is what the Quran is supposed to be relaying the story, presumably. And according to the Quran, anyway, is that the children of Israel are complaining and saying, well, why make him king over us when we are more worthy?
I really don't understand what's going on here. This is all gibberish to me. It's not making any sense, and it has no historical reference. It doesn't even. This is yet again where Muhammad has heard a story. He doesn't know what the story is fully or accurately. So he's heard a name, he's heard a prophet anointed a person, and he's just put a load of words together. He's put his own twist on a narrative that's already in the past.
Don't you think this is like sheer desperation trying to appease the Jews?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see that there, but he doesn't know the story. Like every other story in the Bible or previous scripture or any historical account, he doesn't have the facts. He's heard something and he's trying to put his own, or he's trying to remember it, or he's mixing up stories, or he's just putting it together himself. Now, the interesting thing is his audience are not going to know because they can't read any better than he can read. So they're going to trust him for it. And he's already telling them, well, don't listen to the Jews because he's already told them before that they're twisting up the stories anyway. And he's come to straighten the stories out. So he's really got them in a ringer there.
I think this belongs into the category where he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's saying it because it sounds positive, and he thinks he can impress the Jews with this. This is just some story that he doesn't know where to put.
But presumably scholars, quote unquote, have got to, come up with some explanation for this, because as Thunderous says, at the time they would have just accepted whatever he said, right? But later on, people would have gone, okay, there's a question mark over this, right? So presumably, people would have had to come up with some explanation there if this is supposed to be a clear book for all time.
It doesn't. It just repeat this.
Yeah, but the thing is, you see, this is why the Jews hated him. This is why he was rejected, because every time he came out with a story, the Jews could read and write. So they went to their sources and pointed their finger, no, you're chatting a load of rubbish, mate. What you're saying is not true.
Yeah.
This is where he appeals to his own people, the Arabs and the pagans and whatnot, that were sort of inclined to listen to what he was saying, the illiterate, and saying, well, if you follow me, then you won't have God's wrath on you. But if you follow what they're saying, they're ignoring me, but they've done this before to previous prophets. So he's projecting what's happening to him on previous prophets and kings or people of the past that were sort of like leaders in the nation of Israel. It's like a retrospective projection of what's happening to him in the past to give himself more credibility in the present.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because if any of them reject him, then he can say, hang on a moment, look how the Jews were rejecting Saul, right? And look what happened, right?
That's it. He's using what's happening to him. He's almost like rhetorically putting it back in the past for the present tense for which he's explaining it.
Yeah.
And look at the hard time the exegesis are having with this. They can't do anything with this.
No, they're just repeating what it's saying there, basically,
Yeah,
from what I can see.
Yeah, but what does that say about what we've always said? You know,
exactly.
if you're going to lie, the only way you can defend a lie is by using more lies.
Yeah,
So
or
this
you
is-
have to sort of interpret stuff that wasn't clear there to begin with, right?
Which will still be a lie.
Yeah, it's difficult. I don't know if you've got anything you want to add, Joel, or this is just crazy stuff.
Yeah, Joel, if you want to add something, if you have an idea or something, just chip in.
Cool. All right.
Like, I've never read the. I mean, I've read like a few pages of the Quran. I've never read this book. I've read the story. I've read the story as it's in the Bible, but I mean, this one seems kind of off.
So you know what you've been missing all along.
Right, let's go on to 248. And their prophet said to them, indeed, a sign of kingship is that the chest will come to you in which is assurance from your Lord, and a remnant of what the family of Moses and the family of Aaron have left, carried by the angels. Indeed, in that is a sign for you if you are believers. Yusuf Ali. And further, their prophet said to them, a sign of his authority is that there shall come to you the ark of the covenant, with assurance therein of security from your Lord, and the relics left by the family of Moses and the family of Aaron, carried by the angels. It is a symbol for you if ye indeed have faith. So why is there such a big difference between Sahih International and Yusuf Ali? Because the Yusuf Ali talks about the ark, and this doesn't.
No, it's the same thing. The chest and the ark is the same thing.
Oh, is it right? Kingship is the chest. Okay. I suppose if you read enough of this, you'd know that the chest is supposed to be the ark. But I mean, as soon as you hear the word ark, you go, okay, we know what the Ark of the Covenant is. Obviously, I'm not as theological in the sense of understanding this.
I don't want to put any contention in this discussion, but I don't think either of these two guys are no. I think they're just edging their bets. One is saying it's one thing and the other one is saying it's something else. Because if you mean the Ark of the Covenant, you're always going to say the Ark of the Covenant, because that's what it's always historically been referred to by Jews or Christians. Even the Philistines referred to it as the Ark of the Covenant. So why is the other guy referring to it as a chest of authority? It's never been referred to as that. I think it's because in the Quran it's not made clear what the bloody item is, what the article is. So one is saying it's one thing and the other one is saying it's something else. You know, because Allah clearly hasn't made it clear in his book, and it hasn't made it easy for anyone to understand.
Yeah, the corpus says the ark as well. So why would Sahih International, which is one of the newest translations, not use that for some reason?
Why would Allah not use it? There's the point. Why is Allah not using that word, Ark of the Covenant? After all, if he's supposed to be the same God, it's his bloody ark.
Yeah, exactly. Sign of kingship that will come to you, the ark. Well, supposedly he does say the ark there in the root words, prefix, male, normative, noun. Obviously, I can't read.
Yeah, but that's ambiguous. Ark is ambiguous. It's right. It should say Ark of the Covenant. Then it's specified.
Yeah, it doesn't say covenant, does it? It just says ark.
Exactly. Noah's Ark.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so.
Okay, 249. And when Saul went forth with the soldiers, he said, indeed,
Oh no,
Allah.
please, yes, not more of this.
And when Saul went forth with the soldiers, he said, indeed, Allah will be testing you with a river. So whoever drinks from it is not from me, and whoever does not taste it is indeed from me, excepting one who takes from it in the hollow of his hand. But they drank from it, except a very few of them. Then when he had crossed it, along with those who believed with him, they said, there is no power for us today against Goliath and his soldiers. But those who were certain that they would meet Allah said, how many a small company has overcome a large company by permission of Allah, and Allah is with the patient. Yusuf Ali, let's see if it makes more sense. Yusuf Ali normally makes a little bit more sense than, well, slightly more than Sahih International. And when Tulat, Saul, set forth with the armies, he said, Allah will test you at the stream. If any drinks of its water, he does not go with my army. Only those who taste not of it go with me. A mere sip out of the hand is excused. But they all drank from it, except a few. When they crossed the river, he and the faithful ones with him, they said, "This day we cannot cope with Goliath and his forces." But those who were convinced that they must meet Allah said, "How oft by Allah's will hath a small force vanquished a big one? Allah is with those who steadfastly persevere. Persevere. I suppose.
This is a fantastic example of what I was saying earlier, where he's got two stories and he's jumbled them up. There is an account in the Bible of Gideon leading a task of a few hundred men, and they go past the stream to drink some water, and there is an account there. But then this situation here with Goliath, that's with King Saul and David as a shepherd. When David slays Goliath, you'll notice David's not mentioned here.
No.
Right?
No,
and this is entry level Janet and John knowledge for anybody to go to the Bible and see this is two different accounts in two separate moments in time. So this is clearly Muhammad getting it monumentally wrong.
Wait, it's not mentioned even in the following verses?
I don't think so. I mean, we can look at the next one.
Can I give you the translation by Rashid Khalifa? This makes it much more clear.
Yeah, you can try.
But wait, okay. I have a question about that passage. Do you think, like, Muhammad, you know how it says, right? You know, something about, you know, their army was small and Goliath's army was big?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be a mistake on Muhammad's part? Because you know the story of David and Goliath, right? He was a giant. You know, he was like a shepherd boy who used to slingshot on him.
I think what Thunderous is saying, that there was two accounts. One is there is an account in the Bible of people going to a stream and drinking, and then there's a completely separate story with David and Goliath. There's nothing about Goliath at the stream or related to the stream. Am I understanding that correctly?
No. Okay, let me just do Khalifa before we go on. When Saul took command of the troops, he said, "God is putting you to the test by means of a stream. Anyone who drinks from it does not belong with me. Only those who do not taste it belong with me, unless it is just a single sip." And they drank from it, except a few of them. When he crossed it with those who believed, they said, "Now," because they drank water, "we lack the strength to face Goliath and his troops." And those who were conscious of meeting God said, "Many a small army defeated a large army by God's leave, because God is with those who steadfastly persevere." So what he's saying is this was a test by God. They failed it. And even though there were a few, they would still be able to go and slay, just as Archer said, slay Goliath, even though they just had slingshots and blah, 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 with the help of the God. And this is just that they failed the test now that God gave them. This is the whole point. And then they changed back and they said, "Okay, we're very sorry, dear God, that we drank from the water and we failed the test. And now please help us." So Khalifa, in this case, explains the whole story. And then, you know, this becomes a story and not just some disconnected sentences.
When was that translation?
72.
Okay, so reasonably recent in this great scheme of things, but not as recent. I don't know when Yusuf Ali was.
That the one is like Khalifa is Shia interpretation. He doesn't try.
So what he's doing then is trying to explain it through an interpretation, it's not a direct translation.
Correct. And then it makes, you know, then when you hear the whole story, then in this case it makes sense. Where here this is just gibberish. I don't understand what this is trying to tell me.
Yeah, but then he's taking.
Yeah.
But isn't he taking license there by adding those things in to make the story? So he's essentially, it's almost like a tafsir, really, more than anything else.
That's it. So that's why they killed it.
Right. Okay. Okay, because like you say here, it's all over the show, right?
Yeah.
So he's doing an explanation for this.
Correct.
But he can't claim that that's a Quranic translation then.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the next one, see if it brings any more through the direct translations. Sahih International. And when they went forth to face Goliath and his soldiers, they said, "O Lord, pour upon us patience and plant firmly our feet and give us victory over the disbelieving people." Yusuf Ali. When they advanced to meet Goliath and his forces, they prayed, "O Lord, pour out constancy." sometimes I can't pronounce words, on us and make our steps firm. Help us against those that reject faith.
Yeah, this is what Khalifa says. Then they started saying, "Oops, sorry, boss. Please excuse us."
Please excuse us, meaning?
Excuse us. This is the pour out constancy. In other words, please excuse us for failing your test, and now inject us with some new energy.
But these are the people. Are these the people that failed the test by the river, or are these
Correct.
the people that went with Saul?
Both, same thing.
Okay, but hang on, weren't they supposed to stay at the river? They weren't going to go with him, so he just took a small band with him.
God made a test, said you have to cross the river. So Saul, take your men, cross the river, don't drink, just take a small sip, but don't drink from it. But they did. And then when they came to the other side, and there Goliath and his troops are waiting for him, they didn't have the strength to fight him because they had failed the test and drank from the water. So they're saying, okay, whoops, we drank from the water. Yes, it was a mistake. We understand now that we need your help, dear God. So please forgive us and now give us some patience and give us the strength that we need to go and successfully fight Goliath, which we can't do at the moment.
Okay, well, that's interesting because obviously from Yusuf Ali, it says he and the faithful ones with him, they said we cannot cope. It doesn't mention the unfaithful ones, who would have presumably stayed on the other side of the river and not gone with him.
No, but they crossed the river.
Okay, but where does it say that the unfaithful ones crossed the river? That's what I'm...
No, everybody crossed the river. It's just most of them drank from the water while they were doing so.
It does not go with my army. If any drinks of its water, he does not go with my army. Only those who taste not of it go with me. A mere sip out of the hand is excused, but they all drank of it except a few. When they crossed the river, see, that's like ambiguous, right? Does it mean just the people that crossed him or everybody?
No, you can't say from this text. You need to interpret it.
Because to me, that would mean, right, if he said there, right, you're not going to come with me if you drink of the stream, and only a few of them didn't drink of the stream. When they crossed the river, he and the faithful ones with him, they said, we cannot cope with this. To me, that it seems clear enough to me that means that only he and the faithful ones crossed the river and the other guy stayed on the other side.
Well,
I mean, it's not crystal clear.
Or they died. Or they died, Rob.
Yeah.
Who?
The unfaithful.
The guys who disobeyed and drank from the water.
Yeah, it could be. It doesn't say in here what happened to them.
Exactly. That's why this doesn't make sense.
Well, you know how these Abrahamics think, right? You know, in their stories, when people disobey God, you know, God comes along and kills them.
I will test you with the flowing. I'm just seeing how these guys are trying to make sense of this.
Maybe they were stuck with diarrhea. Thank you, Beach. That's another option.
Against the Lord will not go further against my enemy. But then he made an exception. In the hollow of his hand is enough for them and their breasts and transport. But when they reached the river, however, as they drank much as they wanted to, there we go. 313 men who did not drink except as they had been directed. After they crossed the river, after he had crossed the river, he, i.e. Saul, and those who believed in him said to each other. Okay, so it seems to me that it's him and the 313 that crossed, which is what it kind of says there, but it could have been more clear anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
By the way, fun fact, do you know the 313 is a magic number?
What, in the Quran?
No, in Islam.
It adds up
outside of the Quran because 313 is a number plate of Donald Duck. But you get this in my video on the Iranian fighter plane that they came up, the Ghaya, because there's a Ghaya 313. And I made a joke about this, and I did some research on this, and I found out that it's the number plate of Donald Duck as well. And it's a reference to the troops that killed some non-Muslims. So it's become a magic.
So spamming, does the fact that the digit set up to 7 mean anything?
Yeah.
You could interpret that as well, right? Okay, so they advanced to meet Goliath and his forces, and they prayed and make our steps firm. Okay, let's see what happens next. 251. So they defeated them by permission of Allah, and David killed Goliath. He suddenly appears here. Like, okay, just in the middle of this, right? Saul's talking about it, and suddenly David just like appears. And Allah gave him the kingship and prophet and taught him about what he'd willed. And if it were not for Allah checking some people by means of others, the earth would have been corrupted. But Allah is full of bounty to the worlds. Yusuf Ali. By Allah's will, they routed them. And David slew Goliath. And Allah gave him power and wisdom and taught him whatever else he willed. And did not Allah check one set of people by means of another, the earth would indeed have been full of mischief. But Allah is full of bounty to all the worlds. So suddenly
Allah
David just appears in the battle here.
Captain America.
I mean, there's no mention.
So it does mention David, man. Like, didn't you say earlier?
But he just like suddenly appears. Yeah. So it's all going with the believers and the people that didn't drink from the river, and suddenly David is like seems to magically appear here. You would have thought if David is an important character, he would have been mentioned as going with Saul and all the rest of it. He's just suddenly kills Goliath, right? Like in the middle of, I mean, it's like, even if this is just a story, right? Introducing your main characters and telling us a bit about them is what any good storyteller does, right? You don't just suddenly somebody appears and Superman suddenly raced down and saved Lois Lane, and you're like, well, who the hell is Superman, right?
Man, but you know what, Rob? I do get the impression that, even though it's not stated, that Allah killed the other soldiers, the ones who drank from the river, or like they died when they drank from the river.
I mean, it's not clear what they did there, right? I mean, you could presuppose they did that, or you could speculate they stayed there, or they got sick, or whatever the case is. Again, as you read, if you read with us and you pop on every now and again, I mean, we've said this, over all the shows we've been doing this, it's just not clear, right? And Thunderous makes the point that obviously they're trying to relate it to the Bible, but it's just like patchy all over the show, right? So it's not a story that you can follow. It doesn't introduce characters. It's just. And here's the tufts here, right? This is the explanation from some of the, Al Jalalain is quite well respected, right? And again,
but again, even the Jalalains, they have to refer again. Look at this: slaying Muslims at the bottom, slaying Muslims, and mosques being destroyed. So it's always violence. It's always this thing that you can't convince anybody, by some intellectual means. No, it needs to be violence, and this is why if it's all violence, then we need to prepare for this. We need to defend ourselves. We need to fight them. We need to kill them before they kill us. Is that all this God is capable of? Fighting and killing?
Well, that's the test, right? Fight in the way of Allah. I mean, he could do it all himself, but why would he want to do that when he's got, his faithful to do it for him?
And don't Muslims like Christian think that mankind is naturally in rebellion against God or something like that?
I don't know, but certainly the Muslims obviously talk about it being a test and so forth. So, but anyway, he slew Goliath and gave him the power and wisdom. So now David becomes king, right? Although they don't.
Another one bites the dust.
Again, but then if Saul's king, why is Saul not king anymore and David's now king? Why has that been implemented by Allah?
Because he was you know the story in the Bible, right?
I know the story in the Bible because David.
He was the only one.
He consulted the witch woman of Endor.
He was the chosen one.
But then David replaced him. So that's beside the point. That's the biblical narrative. What I don't understand is why Allah is remiss of giving any account as to why Saul is not king anymore. What has he done for the kingship to be removed from him, given that the nation of Israel, in Islamic parlance, was praying that Allah would give them a king? They get their king, and now all of a sudden they're going to remove him as king and give him somebody else's king, and they've not explained as to why David is going to be the new king.
Presumably they are, or whoever the author is, just thinking, by virtue of him killing Goliath, the big leader of this other group, that would make him suddenly king. But if I remember correctly in the Bible, doesn't it talk about Saul becoming jealous of David over time? And there's a story there. Here he just slew Goliath and suddenly he's been given the power and the wisdom, right?
Not as in Islamic parlance. He was jealous, But it wasn't enough for God to remove the kingship he had bestowed upon him. That came at a much later point in history, and Saul has started to go down the wrong particular path of which the information's in the Bible. But that's irrespective, because we're not, because I don't want to start apologetics. But the point I'm trying to make is there is this story is all jumbled up anyway. It's mixing two different accounts. You got Gideon from the Bible with the 300 men that did go to a stream and drink water like that. And then you got David and Goliath facing the Philistines. David with the nation of Israel. Rather, it's actually Saul with his army facing the nation of Israel. Facing the Philistines with Goliath. And then David comes along. You've got two separate stories from two separate moments in history, and Muhammad's jumbled them up together. He doesn't know the story or the account. He doesn't know which period of time that they're taking place in the nation of Israel's history. This is why this story is so convoluted, and it doesn't make sense. And this is why the Jews were laughing at him. Yeah, and it's just a very sort of, like you say, jumbled, and it's like scenes are just cut in there. And it's not a flowing description of how a story. Suddenly, this guy that's not been mentioned anywhere else appears and kills Goliath. Well, who is this guy? Why is he there? How come he did it and not Saul or somebody else? Right? It's just. And then you've got to go and get explanations, right, from hundreds of years later to try and make sense of all of this.
You know what, though? Muhammad pulled off a Peter Jackson.
Who's Peter Jackson?
The director guy who directed Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but just it was a very poor representation of that. All right, let's move on to the next one.
And thank you for the reference by Simon James with Tom Holland, because I haven't seen it. I saw that it's on, but I haven't watched it yet. I was very chuffed because we had Tom on the Jinn&Tonic show here.
Yeah, it'd be good to get him on again at some point, I guess.
After the show, when he had the Channel 4, I forgot the name of the show, the documentary. And this was so nice. I was so flippant proud of myself because I developed this what I thought was a crazy idea. And I said, okay, let me just run this by you. And I said, this is what I think. Would that fit together with what you know of this background? And he said, yes, I agree with that. I was like, yay!
He's a well-respected historian, isn't he? So.
And the thing, what I love about Tom Holland is he doesn't have any chip on his shoulder. He will come and talk to you like a normal human being, and he will give you a straight answer. He will not tap dance around and say, well, we can't really. No, he will say, look, according to what I know, this is the situation, and this is what we can glean from this. And if he doesn't, he says, I don't know. I don't remember. I can't remember everything. And that's why I think he's so cool. So I'm looking forward to that interview.
Excellent. All right, let's do 242. Sai International. And these are the verses of Allah which we recite to you, O Muhammad, in truth and indeed you are from among the messengers. These are the signs of Allah. We rehearse them to thee in truth. Verily thou art one of the messengers.
That's very useful.
Yeah, just to remind you that he's a messenger, right? So, hey, look at David. He slew Goliath. And hey, just to remind you, here's Muhammad, you're a messenger, right? Not a lot you can say there, I suppose, other than just repeating it again. And Thunderous has made this point as well, associating him with other figures from biblical times that were seen as, leaders or conquerors or whatever the case is, to try and, increase his value, I guess, among the people.
Because he's shifting. Remember, he's been now appeasing the Jews. And now he's saying, yeah, but hang on, Jews. Yeah, you've got a point maybe, but listen here. Now it's Muhammad. You've had Moses. You've had your choice. You've had your time. Now it's Muhammad's time. And this is why I think now he's going to reintroduce Muhammad. He's going to go back to, the messages of Islam, no longer caring about the Jews.
Okay, 253. Sai International. Those messengers, some of them we caused to exceed others. Among them were those to whom Allah spoke, and raised some of them in degree. And we gave Jesus, the son of Mary, clear proofs, and we supported him with the pure spirit. If Allah had willed, those generations succeeding them would not have fought each other after the clear proofs that had come to them. But they differed, and some of them believed and some of them disbelieved. And if Allah had willed, they would not have fought each other. But Allah does what he intends. Yusuf Ali. Those messengers we endowed with gifts, some above others. To one of them Allah spoke. Others he raised to degrees of honor. To Jesus, the son of Mary, we give clear signs and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. If Allah had so willed, succeeding generations would not have fought among each other after clear signs had come to them, but they chose to wrangle, some believing and others rejecting. If Allah had so willed, they would not have fought each other, but Allah fulfilleth his plan. Well, what is his plan exactly? Whatever happens is his plan, right? So it's like an unfalsifiable plan.
Well, it's a science. He's given people, and by the way, this is a direct, a literal contradiction, because it says no messenger has ever been treated, or no prophet has ever been treated differently than any other. And
where's that?
In the Quran.
Is there? Do you know the verse for that one?
Oh, no, not from the top of my heart.
Oh, okay.
But it's there. We have not treated anyone differently, and here it says we definitely have.
But the thing is, when you strip this verse down, it's so full of holes that you have to ask the question: what's going on here? Why can't Allah be consistent? First of all, you're quite right there, Stops. There is an ayah in the Quran that says that all prophets were basically saved. But why is Jesus singled out to have the pure spirit that not even Muhammad got? So Jesus is elevated here. Jesus is born of a virgin. Jesus is elevated here. Jesus is the only prophet referred to in the Quran as the Messiah. Now, the interesting thing is Muslims do not even know what the word Messiah means. And it is quite damning if they ever try and give an explanation. But the point being, why is it that Jesus has all his referrals if all he is just another prophet and a messenger? Then he talks about that there is, what you call it, wars. He sends messengers, and Allah is actually allowing his own people to fight and murder his own people because he allows it. But if he wanted to, he could have stopped it.
Yeah, and Thunderous, it's actually worse because Jesus is the only one who is raised.
Yeah. Exactly. Jesus is the only one that's right. Well, it depends which narrative you go by in that, because I mean, even the Muslims themselves can't decide as to what really happened there. Did he really go to heaven straight away, or did he live somewhere else for a period of time before he went to heaven?
I raised him to me. What does it mean?
I don't know. You tell me what that means, because that's quite
exactly. I treat everybody equal, but Jesus I raised.
If we can find that verse, it would be great to have that, Stops, and to see what Muslims say about this, right?
This is very easy. I'll quickly check.
He raised some of them in degree, right? So if he's raised some of them in degree, or he raised to degrees of honor. To one of them Allah spoke. Others he raised to degrees of honor. Now, presumably the apologetics will be, well, I don't know what. Especially if you got another verse that says that all the prophets are equal in whatever way. I suppose it depends what you're going to bring up, right? But I suppose they would say, well, they were all equally given the name prophet, right? They could come with some apologetic like that, right?
But the thing is
okay, it's in Quran 355.
I'm just going to open another window here and
and it's in Quran 4:157.
So sorry,
3:55. 3.55. Okay, so it's chapter 3, sentence number 55, and again the same thing in chapter 4:157.
Okay, so I'm in Surah 3, verse 55 here. Behold, Allah said, O Jesus, I will take thee and raise thee to myself and clear thee of the falsehoods of those who blaspheme. I will make those who follow thee superior to those who reject faith to the day of resurrection. Then shall ye return to me, and I will judge between you of the matters wherein ye dispute. You sure that's right one?
Yeah. That's exactly what I said. I will raise you to myself.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were bringing up a verse that talked about all the prophets being equal.
I said, okay, Jesus is the one who gets raised. They're all equal, and he gets raised, okay?
Okay. Where does it say they're all equal? That's the part I'm looking for. Okay, so he gets raised there. That's cool. I'm with you on that one. But if we go back to 253, it also talks about him being of honor here, right? So what you've said there is obviously just the raising bit. So he's still the special prophet, right? But you said somewhere in here there is a verse that says that all the prophets are in some way equal. Okay, so somebody in the chat saying, Jinn&Tonic, I can cite for you the verse where it says that all the prophets are equal. Yeah, if you can do that, or better yet, give us the surah and the verse, please. That will be good, and we can bring it up on screen for everybody to see. Because Stops is saying, there's a contradiction, which is, here it suggests that Jesus is superior, and yet elsewhere it says that the prophets are all equal. So again, it'd be interesting to hear from a Muslim as to how they explain this, right? So one of the other questions from this verse, of course, is why is it that Allah allowed them to fight each other? Right? Because if Allah had willed, they'd not have fought each other.
136.
Sorry, say it again.
Chapter 2, 136.
Oh, so we've actually read it before, right? So 136. Yusuf Ali, say, we believe in Allah and the revelation given to us and to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and that given to Moses and Jesus, and that to all prophets from their Lord. We make no difference between one and another of them, and we bow to Allah. Okay. We make no distinction between any of them, and we Muslims in submission to him. So there we go. So that's 136. And here we have 253.
If you go, you see several of those confirming it.
Sorry, what's that?
If you click on the hadith, you see confirmation there as well.
For which one?
For this one.
253.
No. For the everybody's equal.
Oh, right. Okay, right. He raised some of them in degree. So there we go. So if you are a Muslim or you know of any Muslims, so this is 2. I'm just going to put in the chat there. 253 seems to conflict with 136. Muslims, please explain.
I can hear your keyboard.
You sure can. All right, so we'll leave that. So there we go. So there appears to be a question mark at best with Surah 253 and with Surah 136. So maybe a knowledgeable Muslim can explain how there seems to be a contradiction or a conflict at the very least. So we'll leave that to see if we can come back, or a Muslim can come back to us on that. 254. Sahih International. Oh, you have believed, spent from that which we have provided for you before there comes a day in which there is no exchange and no friendship and no intercession. And the disbelievers, they are the wrongdoers. Yusuf Ali, O ye who believe, spend out of bounties that we have provided for you before the day comes when no bargaining will avail, nor friendship nor intercession. Those who reject faith are the wrongdoers. So again, at least Yusuf Ali slightly makes more sense to me anyway. Reading Sahih International makes it even more, certainly on a first reading anyway, just makes it more complicated. You believe, spend from which we have provided for you before that there comes a day in which there is no exchange and no friendship. And the disbelievers, they are the wrongdoers. Yeah, Yusuf Ali just sort of, to me, sounds, maybe I should read Yusuf Ali first in future and see if that, because obviously I'm reading Sahih International, then reading Yusuf Ali, and Yusuf Ali seems to make it slightly clearer, right? We provide for you the day comes when no bargain will avail. Presumably, this day is this, what do we call it? The Judgment Day? Is that what they're referring to there? Oh, is anybody still there?
I mean, it seems like it, right?
Okay, there's a different version here. You shall give to charity from the provisions we have given to you before a day comes where there is no trade, no nepotism, and no intercession. So there is no direct reference to the judgment day.
No, so okay, so the Ibn Abbas talks about the day of judgment, and Jalalain talks about the day of resurrection. Does he? Let's make sure. Benefit without his permission. This is the day of resurrection. Okay, so presumably day of resurrection, day of judgment, they're going to say is the same thing.
It is, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like that in you know, the Bible's Revelation, right? You know, all the dead are resurrected, so they can be judged.
Yes. Yeah. So that's kind of what he's saying here. This is a warning, right? Presumably, when the day comes, you won't be able to get any friendship or intercession, and no bargaining, etc. Spend of the bounties that we have provided for you. Now, what are the bounties, though?
Bounties are those houris with almond-shaped eyes and rivers of wine where they're perpetual virgins.
Yes, but isn't that? But those bounties are only in heaven, isn't it? So,
is it bounties or booties?
Bounties, I think it is.
You know,
bounties.
Beyonce type booties, because that's when they're talking. You know, this is just it. You see, this is where Muhammad yet again it doesn't know what's going on as far as the Judeo-Christian understanding of what the future beholds in their ascension of what's going to happen. You know, on the day of resurrection or the day of judgment. He's just mixing it all along and coming up with his own ideas. None of this makes any sense.
So here we're saying, okay, so again, here this guy's interpreting it to mean we have provided you, giving charity from the wealth. Presumably wealth is your lands, your oxen, your possessions in some way, right? It might also be your money. Provided alms here, so giving alms, right?
I think this is establishing this zakat. I think this is just a method. Remember, he's now shifting into Islamic messages. So he's saying, look, if you're a disbeliever, you're an asshole. What you need to do is you need to, before the day of judgment comes, you need to go and look at all the things that I have done for you and give a little bit back to the others. So this, I think, is the general message that he's just now going back into Islam away from the Jews, because he's just simply introducing the concept of tithing.
Yeah, that's kind of what you're saying in a sense here. Here's Maududi saying that you adopt the way of disbelief may either refer to those who refuse to obey the commands of Allah and consider the hoarding of wealth to be dearer than winning of his approval, or those who do not believe in the day about which warning has been given, salvation in the hereafter through somebody's friendship or intercession. So it could be one or the other according to Maududi. But we did have a verse that said this was clear, right? Clearly,
those who aren't Muslim, Rob.
Sorry?
Those who aren't Muslim.
Oh, right, okay. Well, if some of the scholars saying it could be this or that, well, and again, presumably, I've heard a number of Muslims talk about Maududi, so I think, again, he's at least recognized as a reasonable scholar, apparently. All right, let's go to 55. I'm going to do Yusuf Ali first this time and see if that makes sense without doing Sahih International.
But I mean, I have a question though. Are the scholars really necessary for this?
Yeah, I mean, you can't make sense of this without it, right?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, the writing seems kind of clear to me, right? I mean, maybe
stop trolling.
No, I'm not trolling. There's like some ambiguity here and there, but I mean, it's not that bad. Come on.
You don't know who's been spoken about in some of them, right? You just read the. If I gave you this book, y'all, and you had no footnotes, you had nobody to speak to, and you read some of these verses, and any of us asked you, who's he referring to here? You would have absolutely no clue, right? Unless they mention somebody, and then you go, well, how do we know that the person being mentioned is in fact is that the case, right? There's no way to tell that. So,
well, I mean, so sometimes, but I mean, thing is, right? Even nonsense can be clear.
Yeah, well, this appears not to be clear as well. It's very ambiguous. You don't know who they're referring to. The way it's written, again, you could imagine Allah being able to write this in such a way that every person who read it, whatever the translation was, it was clear, right? I think all of us are reading this and we're trying to understand it, right? It's not as if we're trying to be foolish here. And it doesn't appear clear. I mean, okay, so I'll read this one and then you tell me what you think about this. Okay, let's see how we do here. Yusuf Ali, so this is for you, y'all. Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self-subsisting, eternal. No slumber can seize Him nor sleep. He has all things in the heavens and on earth. Who is there can intercede in His presence except He, as He permitteth? He knoweth that, appeareth to His creatures as, before or after or behind them, nor shall they compass aught of His knowledge except as He willeth. His throne doth extend over the heavens and the earth, and He feeleth no fatigue in guarding and preserving them, for He is the Most High, the Supreme. Okay, I suppose that's easy enough to just say this is talking about Allah and telling you how wonderful He is, right?
Right.
Okay, but we'll get some more here.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Maybe the next one's a little bit more big.
But Joel, I explained this a couple of shows ago, where we used some examples to show how Islam works. And really, Islam does not work on a Quran level. The Quran works on a scholar level. The way that it works is you take the Quran, you don't understand it, you go to your dad, he doesn't understand it, you go to Imam, doesn't understand it. He goes to Imam conference, he doesn't understand it. And that's what, when you get to the different scholars, where you have the different groupings of scholars to give you the jurisprudence, the reasoning behind everything, which is then being interpreted into the actions that you take every day. So a Muslim today will not follow the Quran, will not follow Muhammad, will not follow any. He will pick a particular scholar and follow that particular scholar. So this is why you have these Nouman Ali Khans, you have the Yasakadis, you have all these guys where you have specific people, or Bilal Phillips, even this idiot. People will follow them for a couple of things that they will say. And they will say, I believe that Zakir Naik is a good scholar. What he says is correct, and they follow him. That is now the Islam. So you have Islam, the Zakir Naik version, and not the Quran version or Muhammad version.
Well, now I don't know about this, right? I'll admit it. I don't know about, the scholars or, who follows what scholar or whatever. But I mean, I have a question. Is it the case that you don't understand this, or you do, but you know that you understand that it's nonsense?
No, I don't think. Well, we don't think it's true anyway. But we're also trying to read it and see whether it makes sense in reading it without referring to tafsirs or scholars. But one thing you could do, y'all, in future, every time you speak to a Muslim, ask him, who do you follow? Right? I mean, it's a bit of a leading question, or you could say, which scholar do you follow? Now, you might get a Muslim who says, no, I don't follow any scholar. I just read the Quran. I mean, I'll be very surprised if you can find a Muslim who will outright say he doesn't follow a scholar, as Stops says, right? Because this is not easy for any of them to read, even if they understand it in Arabic, right? And forget the Arabic. There's obviously more English-speaking people or non-Arabs that are Muslims than there are Arabs, right? So for all those people, they've got to read one of these interpretations or one of these translations anyway, right? How are they going to make sense of this, right? They're going to presumably go to an imam or a scholar or whatever the case is. I mean, we've had some Muslims on here, right? And they follow what's Abu Layth, this one, that one. There's a. If you look at some of the speakers called in the videos, there's a sheikh that goes down there wearing his little tea towel on his head, etc. And some of them follow him around. So most of them will follow somebody, right? They just won't get this on their own. They'll be with somebody or other.
And if you ask a Muslim, can you tell me what it says there in this sentence in the Quran? He will say, no, but I will check with my elders. I will check with my, the knowledgeable people. If you don't know something, ask the knowledgeable ones. And they will then go back to the scholar and ask, what does this say? And then they will repeat what the scholar says, because if you make a mistake, it's a sin. So you are not allowed to interpret the Quran yourself. You are told that you have to go back to the people of knowledge, that you don't do it yourself.
So like that they won't even read or consult the book itself, they'll go straight away to consulting other people.
Correct.
Because I mean, I can understand, right? Like, okay, so you consult the book, but I mean, maybe there's something about the passage that's not clear to you, so then you try, a scholar, right? Someone who's devoted a lot of time and effort to understanding and stuff. I mean, I understand that, but I mean,
have you seen the video of Simon of Jamie in the park with Adnan Rashid? Now, there's a couple of people like Ali Dawa, Adnan Rashid. They don't have this level of intellect. Okay, so but this is so typical. This is such a stereotype when Jamie says, "Here's what it says in the Quran," and then even somebody like Hijab will not answer. But the comment, this is for me is a classic, Adnan Rashid will say, have you read all the tafsirs on that? So he's not able to come up with an argument to counter what Jamie is confronting him with from out of the Quran. But he says, if you haven't read all the tafsirs on this, you are not competent enough to make a comment on this. And this is the outlook.
Yeah, and Joel, that's specifically the case with the 411, 412, the inheritance error in the Quran, right? Because Jamie stood on a ladder, and these guys couldn't respond to him, right? So their only response is, has he read all the tafsirs? And he read about 3, 4, or 5 of them, and that wasn't enough. They all laughed as if he was like some buffoon, right? But they couldn't respond to this in any way whatsoever. But here's 242, because I sort of mistakenly started the show with this one. Thus does Allah make clear to you his verses that you might use reason. Thus does Allah make clear his signs to you in order that ye may understand. So it's clear there in 242 that it's saying that he's making this clear, right? And here we're getting, verses that are not clear. Clear to me means you can read the verse. All of us, we're competent individuals. When none of us are retards, right? We should be able to read the verse and go, yeah, we get it, understand it, right? Because we can imagine Allah doing this. Human beings can do this. So why can't Allah do this, right?
And Giles, you mentioned the point about scholars, reading, spending many years understanding this stuff, but they're not understanding to teach it. They're understanding to sell it. And you'll get different scholars that are selling it in different locations. That you have scholars for the Islamic audience in Islamic-controlled countries, and you have scholars that are there to teach for those who are in Western countries that where Islam is a minority, in order to sell it to the indigenous of which they are alien residents. So you don't have a consistent pattern with Islam. Islam is determined by the demographics of where it resides.
Yeah,
okay, that's a fair point.
All right, let's move on to 256. So we've been given the explanation of God and so forth. Let's see what this has got to say. Yusuf Ali, let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Whoever rejects evil and believes in Allah hath grasped the most trustworthy handhold that never breaks, and Allah heareth and knoweth all things. Sahih International, there shall be no compulsion in acceptance of the religion. The right course has become clear from the wrong. So whoever disbelieves in Taghat and believes in Allah has grasped the most trustworthy handhold with no break in it. Allah is hearing and knowing. But this is not the one, Stops and Thunderous, just correct me, this is not the one that they often quote, is it? I mean,
no, it's one of them, yeah.
Is it one of them? Right.
But this verse is probably one of the most useless verses in the Quran. And I mean, most of them are useless, if not all of them. But this is pretty much on the top tier of useless, because it says there's no compulsion in religion. Yet, what is the punishment for leaving Islam?
Well, yeah.
Okay,
right?
And Muhammad was made victorious with what?
Terror.
And what is the punishment for making mischief in Muslim lands?
Death.
So if there's no compulsion in religion, what does this ayah really mean?
Nothing.
There you go.
Presumably they are going to come back. Let's just see if the tafsirs. Okay, before we go to tafsirs, presumably they could come back and say there's no compulsion in the sense that you have free will and the truth is clear to you. So that may be, quote unquote, an interpretation that you can give here, that says you're not compelled. It's just when you read this, the truth stands out. It's nothing about being compelled into the religion. It's about you having free will, and you read this. It's like a magic book that the moment you read it, it's all just made clear to you. It stands out from error, and you couldn't, unless you were intellectually dishonest, you couldn't reject it, right?
Yeah, but there's no compulsion, except if you don't, you're going to burn.
Well, let's just see here. Ibn Abbas, there's no compulsion. No one from among the people of the book and the magicians should be coerced into... Magians, sorry. Okay. Should be coerced to believe in the divine oneness of Allah after the Arabs embraced Islam, the right direction henceforth distinct from error, faith from disbelief, and the truth. The following is revealed about this fella, the command of the devil, etc. So he's saying that no one from among the book should be coerced. Let's just see. There's no compulsion entering into religion. A rectitude has become clear from evil. They say through clear proofs it's become manifest that faith is rectitude and belief is error. Rectitude? Rectitude. What is rectitude? Is that like repeating it, or is that just truth, or what is rectitude?
The correct way of understanding things.
Okay. Try to compel their sons. Yeah, so it seems to me that's kind of along the lines of where they want to go here. There's no compulsion. Like, you're not forced to believe this, right?
Okay.
But when you read it becomes clear.
Rob, you need to understand this. You have three options, okay? This is it's very clear in Islam. Islam is based on three options. The number one option is you embrace Islam. Number two, you don't embrace Islam, but then you need to leave. And the third thing is you become a dhimmi, or you get killed. Okay, so the dhimmi and depends on what kind of a madhab you're in, but those are the three options that you are given, and you're given 3 days, and you need to decide what you want, and this then defines your fate, whether you're going to be killed, chucked out of the country, or you're going to live as a dhimmi, as a second-class citizen, and pay the Muslims just so that you are allowed to live there, and they will tax you to death. So those are the options that you have, and they're saying, well, this is hypocritical. There's no compulsion. No, of course not, because you have three options. But the three options, it's the same as what we had 2 shows ago, where it says, well, it's better to be killed than to live in submission or something like this. Can't remember what the word was. It's hypocritical. It's totally wrong. It's totally nonsensical, because you have a choice between a rock and a hard place, and this is not really a choice. So there is, bloody hell, a lot of compulsion in Islam. And I don't know if you remember the story in Spain, for example, where the people learned that if they were flinging themselves to the ground and saying Allah, Allahu Akbar, then they were spared. And the people learned this very quickly. And this is how they survived. So just because they learned how to do that, they survived. They were not killed, and they were not subdued and taxed to death and things like that. So reality shows there's a lot of compulsion. So this sentence is exactly what Thunder said. It's the height of hypocrisy. It's the height of nonsense. This is one of the worst sentences of all, because it pretends like you have a choice, but you don't.
Or at the very best, if you could say that, it's not a true choice of one or the other. There's choices that are specifically left out, right? A choice could be, hey, if you choose not to have this, you live in peace with whatever you believe, and nobody will
you
touch
go your
right?
way, and I believe my way, you believe your way. This is also a sentence in the Quran. To you, your religion, to me, mine. That's cool. That's okay if there are no consequences, but unfortunately here there are consequences.
The thing is, as well, I also have to bear in mind at what point in Muhammad's history, and when this verse is revealed, as to what was the climate at the time, as to how many followers he had as well. What was his influence? What was his audience? So if you were sitting there listening to this, Muhammad at the time would have been a minority, and you've only had a few people following him. So this verse would have sounded very reasonable to the ears of those that were listening to him. It's a very tolerant, reasonable, as Stops has brought out, about to your religion, me and mine. I won't follow what you worship, and you won't follow what I worship. I think it's one of the first surahs revealed.
Yep, correct.
So this sits along with that. It confirms it and corresponds with it. But when he starts gaining popularity and majority and influence, This verse is left to the side, and that's where the vitriol comes out later. Hence why this is one of the most useless verses in the Quran. Because he knows at some point in the future, and certainly Allah would know, and this is the irony. If this is a book made clear, easy to understand, this verse was in heaven before the universe was ever created. So what's the fucking point of the verse?
Religious people lie.
Well,
this verse would have had a lifespan of how long before it was abrogated or contradicted? How long was this verse's lifespan? What, 5 years?
Less than 20, that's for sure.
But the maximum, there's my point, the maximum you can give it is 20 years. That's all this verse is valued for. Yeah, it was in heaven since before the universe was ever created. In the book made clear, a book easy to understand.
See, what we need, though, and what's out there, and this presumably with Bill Warner and others, is to show when this verse was actually revealed in chronological order, right? Because like you and Stop said, this was done very early in his Medinan days, right? But this is not clear anywhere in the Quran, right? So for a Muslim who doesn't know any of the stuff, they can point to this verse and just, and not, because most of the time when we critique it, right, their response is, hey, you've got to take the context. But when you have a verse like this, never at any point will I've ever heard a Muslim go, read a verse like this and go, hang on a moment, guys, let me also give you the context. That word suddenly just disappears from their mouth, right? But as soon as you have a critique, let's talk about the context.
I'll tell you what this is. This is where my point earlier on, when I said about the demographic of the locations to where Islam manifests itself. If this is in the Western world, if this is in London to Birmingham to Scotland, this verse will be brought out to the ignorant and the obtuse and the naive and the gullible, so as to be reasoned with that Islam is a religion of peace. Look, there's no compulsion in religion. Islam is a religion of peace. But to the astute, the educated, the informed, and the discerning, they would recognize that in a majority-controlled country of where Islam is the majority, this does not mean there's no compulsion in religion, because in those controlled countries, you can't leave Islam. So you are under compulsion to stay in that religion. There is compulsion under that religion.
And they're being selective, right? They pointed this verse and ignored the others that contradicted. But Rob, when you quote a verse to a religious person and you know they bring up context, I mean, you can try asking them how the context changes the meaning, because I mean, really, that's a claim for them to support. I mean, does a line right after say "ha ha" kidding or what?
Well, as a good example, right? I think it's 434 that talks about, if I remember correctly, a verse of the sword. I mean, the guys will correct me if not. But if you find a Jew behind a rock or a Jew, kill him, right? And the context. So when you point that verse out in and of itself, that looks pretty bloodthirsty, right? But the Muslim will immediately tell you that this was in the context of a war, and they were just seeking out those people that they feared would kill them, right? So it is important for them, when it's critiqued from a negative point of view, that a verse in and of itself that looks very bloodthirsty, they will want to explain, let's give you the context for the verse, right? And then once they give you the context, then they think, well, now I've explained this, right? It's just these Muslims defending themselves, right? And anybody would defend themselves, right? And so that's how they do that. But then when a verse like this comes up and you say, well, hang on a moment, what's the context of this verse? Nobody says a word, right?
There's another point here, because you said that the actual delivery date, we don't know the actual delivery date, because even with Bill Warner, this is just a fun exercise. This is just a joke, because what you need to rely on is an accurate biography, which doesn't exist. I mean, this is like 8th, 9th, whatever century that people came up with some ideas about Muhammad, but they didn't really have anything. This is just a thought experiment where you can say, well, yeah, there's a difference between the types of sentences, and therefore Medina and Mecca and blah, blah. No, it's not really there, because there are so many assumptions that you need to make before this works. So there is no Quran which says this was revealed on this and this date, or during this and this. This is just people making it up. This is just, it's apologetics, where you get a Quran where every single sentence is labeled or has an addition with a date in it. But this is just speculation. This is just somebody making an assertion without any kind of, or any way of verifying it.
Do you think that it's an informed thing, or do you just think it's a thumbs up stops? If you had to analyze it from that point of view, do you think, for example, because I know when we had Bill Warner on the show, and I asked him this question, he said, no, he actually got it from a guy, if I remember correctly, we'd have to go to the show, but he basically got it from a guy in Belgium that had done all that hard work in the 1920s
Exactly.
or 1930s
Yeah.
that had ordered this correctly. So presumably this fellow that did this didn't just go, hey, let me suck my thumb and I'll just throw this verse here and that verse there. He would have done some research. I grant what you're saying, which is that there isn't clear historical evidence, but he would have done something that he could argue if he came on the show or anybody else that, hey, it's likely to be in this order, like you say, because of this. You could respond by saying, hey, well, that's not clear. You don't actually have any historical documents, and you probably have to agree with that. But would it be reasonable to at least say, hey, this seems plausible?
Yeah, but as soon as you start hearing this, all I need to do is say, well, the whole story around Mecca is fabricated. That's it. End of story. Kills it.
Like when these people, whether they're Muslim, Jews, Christians, make claims, you can put them on the defensive, man. Make these people support the rubbish they're spitting out.
And they can't, because we've shown already that the whole story with Mecca doesn't work. It is fake. It's a lie. It's not there. So what are you going to do? The whole thing with Muhammad is based on Mecca. But we know that Mecca definitely, for sure, 100% cannot be possible. It cannot have happened in Mecca. That is the one thing we know for 100% sure. So the whole story is already, it's collapsed.
Wait, is it because Mecca didn't exist back then, or what?
Absolutely.
Well, number one, that, and number two, all the descriptions, all the geology, all the agriculture, all the claims made around Mecca simply don't match, because it's not in a valley. There's no stream. There's no second valley. There's no way that you can have the produce that is supposed to be on the market because there's no olives within 1,000 miles. So how are you going to do that?
But so just checking with you, because I remember us talking about this, obviously, but did the place called Mecca exist at Muhammad's time or not at all?
Not at all.
No.
Okay, right.
It only came in like 100 years later. This is the same thing with Nazareth. Nazareth didn't exist. They projected it later because somebody said, hey, I know this little village. Nobody's bound to have heard of it. Let's put Jesus into this little village. This is why he's called Jesus of Nazareth, even though it didn't exist. The same thing with Mecca. It didn't exist. So they said, well, let's take some place. There's this little place down there. Let's put the story down there. But they forgot. I mean, they didn't do fact checking in those days. They didn't have an internet to check when was, Mecca mentioned. They just took it and everybody believed it.
All right, let's move on to 257. Yusuf Ali, Allah is the protector of those who have faith. From the depths of darkness, he will lead them forth into light. And of those who reject faith, the patrons are the evil ones. From light, they will lead them forth into the depths of darkness. They will be companions of fire to dwell therein. What do you make of that, Yop?
Wait, I'm reading the other ones because I hate Shakespearean English, whatever you call it.
Or Sahih International. Allah is the ally of those who believe. He brings them out of darkness into light, and those who disbelieve, their allies are taghut. They take them out of the light into the light. Take them out of the light into darkness. Those are the companions of the fire. They will abide eternally therein.
And they abide there because Allah has chosen for them to abide there. Because if we go to the previous few ayahs earlier, when the Jews were killing the Jews were killing the Jews, the believing ones on the disbelieving ones, because that's how Allah wanted it. So those Jews will be in hell because Allah wanted to have because he could have made it clear to them. He didn't make it clear. They'll squabble. Some died, so they went to hell for eternity.
So like these taghut, right? They're like demons or something.
No, idols.
Idols. But I mean, because okay, yeah, they lead the unbelievers to hell. I mean, it doesn't say hell, but I take it to be hell.
Yeah. Again, God is the
That's why
friend of
I'm an
those.
idol worshipper, because I only worship what I want, what is beneficial for me, and that is why I deserve to go to hell. It's that easy.
So yeah, so Jalalain saying God is the protector. He brings them forth, but there's no compulsion there. So he brings them forth, presumably because his word is so clear and concise and so convincing that anybody who has it doesn't require a compulsion. It just sort of comes off the page, right?
That's something as well, because the Jews were compelled not to believe in the prophets that were sent there, and they had their arguments and were killing each other because Allah compelled them not to believe. So how can there be no compulsion in religion when Allah had already compelled some Jews not to believe him from the prophets they used?
Well, of course, they would say that Allah knew this, but that these Jews still had free will, right?
He compelled them.
He's hardened their hearts.
Yeah, it's who knows? God is a
Oh,
protector.
hey, it's us. They're protectors or false deities.
Yeah. You bring them forth into the light. The repetition of bringing forth from here is either to be taken as a reflection of his previous words, he brings them forth from the shadows, or as a reference to all those Jews who believed in the prophet before he was sent, but then rejected him. Those are the inhabitants of the fire, and therein shall they abide.
So you believe something before you've actually seen it. Brilliant.
Yeah, and Al-Jalalain is quite a renowned scholar, so it's rare that somebody. Sorry?
They're brothers.
So there's very few people that will reject Al-Jalalain, as far as I can tell, anyway. Okay, let's do one more, shall we? And let's just see what the next one is, and then we can do a hadith and finish before 10. Yusuf Ali, hast thou not turned thy vision to one who disputed with Abraham about his Lord, because Allah had granted him power? Abraham said, My Lord is he who giveth life and death. He said, I give life and death. Said Abraham, but it is Allah that caused the sun to rise from the east. Do thou then cause him to rise from the west? Thus was he confounded who in ignorance rejected faith. Nor doth Allah give guidance to a people unjust. Sahih International. Have you not considered the one who argued with Abraham about his Lord, merely because Allah had given him kingship? When Abraham said, My Lord is the one who gives life and causes death. He said, I give life and cause death. Abraham said, Indeed, Allah brings up the sun from the east, so bring it up from the west. So the disbeliever was overwhelmed by astonishment, and Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. What do you make of that, James? James. We don't have James on here tonight. I'm thinking of James SC. Yeah, what do you make of that?
First of all, he doesn't even know what the argument is. I know what argument is. It's not even an argument. It's just a discussion between, if you look at the biblical narrative, there's a discussion going on between God and Abraham. Muhammad doesn't know what the discussion is. That's why there's no detail as to what the dispute was. He doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Because
if you look at if I may, the biblical narrative of what's going on here, where he's got the story from, is where God's going to punish Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham asks, well, if there were 50 righteous men in there, would you destroy it? God says no. So the discussion goes all the way down to, if there were 5 righteous men in there, would you destroy it? God says no. If you think about that alone, if there were 50, would you destroy it? Then he goes down to 5. It's very similar to when Muhammad went to heaven about the prayers. 50 prayers a day goes all the way down to 5. So you can see where all the stories are getting conflicted. This is one of those conflicted stories where he's got a little bit of a story. He doesn't know the details, so he just uses the word dispute there. There was a dispute going on between Abraham and God, and there's just a load of word salad that follows.
I mean,
because like the original, in the original, God was, bargaining. Abraham was bargaining with God, but Muhammad thinks he was like debating some other person, right?
Well, no, he knows it wasn't even a debate and argument between Abraham and God. It was a discussion about, how just or unjust is God. That would he destroy righteous people among the unrighteous?
He was like trying to bargain with God, trying to plead. It's like, oh, you know, what if there's like 10? Like, well, you spare the city.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not clear in here, is it, Joel? So you can't, I mean, you wouldn't be able to just take that. Obviously, Thunderous has explained that a little bit, but you wouldn't know that by reading this verse, right?
Honestly, maybe. I'm not sure, but I mean, it's pretty clear here that, you know, this disbeliever obviously wasn't God, right? He was some other person that was questioning Abraham.
Yeah, but it's not clear who it was, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. It doesn't mention his name, but I mean, I don't think that's a big deal, to be honest.
I mean, but this is, a lot of this happens, right? And it could be so easily fixed, right? By mentioning the people who's speaking, because presumably, you know, if you go to the tafsir here, let's just see if they bring it up here, Abraham. He is Nimrod.
I mean, it doesn't matter what his name was. Like, isn't the point of this verse to be like, well, you know, don't be like this guy who challenged Abraham?
Yeah, but here it is. The
Exactly.
tafsirs have to tell you 200 years later that they think he's talking about Nimrod, right? And presumably they'll give you a whole argument as how they can infer this historically, but they could have just put this into the Quran, right? So Nimrod brought 2 prisoners and killed them, etc., etc. And this is what we talk about, right? It's he said, they said, etc. When all you need to do is have names. So you've got the tafsirs, the scholars afterwards, hundreds of years later, who are then pointed. They've got to try and work out historically, well, who the hell was he speaking about? Okay, well, there's most likely this guy Nimrod, right?
Who gives a shit, though? I mean,
the reason
it doesn't add anything to the story if you know who the name was.
Well, it does in the sense that it tells you the narrative. So if you want to look it up historically, especially today, and forget about the people of those days who didn't know anything, right? But especially if you want to look it up today, or if you were reading this book, you go, oh, okay, now I know who he's talking about. Right? But if you read this book like you read this, like we said, if I gave this to you and I said, yo, who's speaking here? Who are they talking about? You'd have no idea, right?
I don't know, and I don't care.
Well, I guess the point is that this is supposed to be a book made clear by God. Is this the best he can do, right?
But the thing is, the commentators don't know. They've just made this stuff up. They've got to try and almost like clean up this mess. And the only reference work they've got when they're trying to clear this mess up is to go back to the Judeo-Christian writings that precede them. That's the only way they can give this book credibility. 123,999 prophets have gone before Muhammad. Yet every time we talk about these accounts, it only refers to the Judeo-Christian God and the Judeo-Christian writings. Why are no other prophets mentioned? Why no other accounts off in other lands, with other books, with other dialects, with other cultures and other languages? Why is it always the same people mentioned? We're talking about from Adam all the way down to Muhammad.
I've asked this question as well. I've said, well, why is there no accounts in other languages and other cultures around the world that match either the Christian or the Muslim accounts, right? And I don't get an answer from any Muslim I've ever spoken to. Right?
Yeah, all the commentaries by Jalalain or whoever, they only refer to the Judeo-Christian writings. They don't refer to all the Judeo-Christian prophets. They don't come out with anything else. 123,999 prophets and messengers have been sent. Yet you only ever get the same 25, 26 mentioned.
Yeah, it's you would expect these other. You'd expect hundreds, if not thousands, of other prophets to be named, and for other stories to match this very, very closely. That's what you would expect, right? If they all went out with the same message.
And even if you don't get hundreds of thousands, give me 20, give me 50, give me one from another land, from another time, from another location, with another message, with another language and another culture. You have that. There might be some reference point in history that we can refer to.
How about South America, Australia,
Rob,
somewhere that's far away?
What about India? What about China? I mean, we don't have to go that far from the continent if they're in that Middle Eastern region. What about Africa? What about Northern Africa? What about India? What about China? What about in the Balkans area? What about Europe? We don't have to go to America and South America and Australia. What
I
about
want Iceland.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any. Yeah, okay, let's have closing comments. I think that'll be it for the day. We're coming on 10 o'clock.
No, please. I want to be anal first.
I have an idea who the disbeliever was. The disbeliever.
No, because we're getting so used to this, but I need to point this out. If you look at the sentence, I mean, shouldn't Allah, the creator of the universe, the creator of the worlds, the creator of the sun, know that he does not bring up the sun from the east?
Hang on a second. Let's just bring this up again. Since
Right. There's gravity and whatnot.
So you're asking about the whole thing. Where
Allah brings up the sun from the east. It doesn't.
Cause the sun to rise from the east.
It's factually incorrect. Shouldn't the guy who did everything know better?
Do you then cause him to rise from the west?
No, he doesn't say it's the earth rotating, so we see the sun coming into view on the eastern horizon. He says he's causing the sun to rise. The sun does not rise.
Oh, yeah. But Stops, I don't think you'd get that. No Muslim
I
would have a
said I
problem
want
with
to be anal, please. I said please.
Well, you could do. I mean, you could do, but that wouldn't be persuasive
I know who
to
the
anybody,
disbeliever was, though. It was Satan. Satan was the disbeliever.
Probably.
Well, any non-Muslim would be a disbeliever as well, right?
But the one who spoke to Abraham and, maybe he was jealous because God made him king or whatever.
Well, the tafsir said was Nimrod, right? I don't remember.
But how do they know that?
Nimrod.
I go with Joel. I think he makes more sense than what the tafsir say. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I just thought, we're getting so used to this nonsense that we don't even mention this anymore. Okay. And my expectation, like I always say, my expectation of God is perfection. And this is not perfection if he says he causes the sun to come up from the east. That's factually incorrect.
Yeah, you could have said, hey, yeah, the planet or what you live on is a sphere and it turns and that appears to show that the sun rising when in fact it's really just the earth turning on its own axis or whatever.
Exactly.
That would have been, they wouldn't have understood that, but today we would have gone, wow, okay, he explained that quite well, right? Even though Eratosthenes sort of worked out that the earth was spherical how many years before? Around just under 1,000 years before that.
Oh, wasn't he 1600?
280 BC. So 280 plus 620, whatever you want to call it, or 600. So what's that, 820, give or take?
That's
so a little under 1,000 years. Yeah, it was 280 BC. All right. Let's have a hadith of the day to finish us off.
Last time we heard that water cannot be defiled, no matter what you pour in it, whether it's dead dogs or menstruation rags, just go ahead and drink it. As long as you can get 2 pitchers out of it, it's clean. Today we're going to make the same thing, but this time with dust or soil or whatever. So, and we need to know, I mean, we know it contains germs and parasitic organs, and this is harmful. Okay, so if you eat dust, there's a lot of shit that goes or can go in your mouth, all right? Narrated Abdurrahman ibn Absa. A man came to Umar bin Khattab and said, I became junub, but no water was available. In other words, he wants to now go pray, but he couldn't because he can't do the ritual washing. So he said to him, do you remember that you and I were together on a journey and you didn't pray, but I rolled myself on the ground and prayed? I informed the Prophet about it, and he said, it would have been sufficient for you to do like this. The Prophet then stroked lightly the earth with his hands and then blew off the dust and passed his hands over his face and hands. In Sahih Bukhari, book 1, volume 1, book 7, 334. And this shows that the argument that a lot of Muslim apologists come up with, that the basic hygiene functions are already in the Quran, are total nonsense. This is a ritual. It's a ritualistic movement. It has nothing to do with washing or cleaning yourself with, from germs or bacteria or anything like that. It's just a ritual. because you can use dirty soil to do the same thing.
And on that note, thank you, Stops. Thank you, y'all, for joining us this evening. Thanks to Thunderous, as always. I hope you enjoyed it. I have posted the Discord link. I shall do it again very quickly here again. Some of us will be on there for an after show, so if you'd like to join us, that will be offline to have a conversation, then please feel free. And we will be back next Friday, 8 p.m. to continue on from 2:56, I think it is. So again, thank you to everybody. We bid you good night and join us on Discord if you want to chat further. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, doorknob head. Erostostenes knew how to use his stick well. Thank you, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Mwah. Mwah.